When a quiet woman finally confronts the lies wrapped around her life, she discovers betrayal not from strangers, but from the people she trusted most. A sister fueled by secrets. A lover bound by deception. A cousin turned predator. And, at the center of it all, a cursed ledger that demands blood for truth. The night sky pressed against the Langston estate like a velvet curtain, its silence broken only by the faint hum of cicadas hidden in the gardens. Inside the sprawling mansion, chandeliers spilled golden light over marble floors polished to a gleam. The grand ballroom pulsed with life, guests in silks and tuxedos, glasses raised, laughter spilling like champagne. It should have been a night of celebration, but for Kiera Langston, it was a night of suffocating pretense. Standing at the edge of the ballroom, Kiera's hazel eyes swept over the crowd, landing on her sister Clara. Clara always commanded the spotlight with effortless charm, her crimson dress clinging to every curve, her laugh ringing brighter than the music. People gravitated to her the way moths were drawn to flame. Beside her, Kiera felt invisible. For years, she had learned to play her role, the quiet one, the peacemaker, the daughter who bent rather than broke. Her parents, Edward and Margaret Langston, had made their favoritism clear long ago. Clara was the golden child, the heir to their affection and their legacy. Kiera was the shadow. Tonight was supposed to be about family unity. Their father's health had taken a turn, and whispers of inheritance lingered in every conversation. The Langstons were powerful, their fortune built on generations of ruthless deals, and both daughters knew what was at stake. But Kiera's heart wasn't on wealth or titles. It lingered elsewhere, on the man she had loved for years, the one who had chosen her sister instead. Kiera's chest tightened as her gaze found him across the ballroom. Adrian stood tall, dark-haired, with the kind of presence that drew attention without effort. He was laughing at something Clara whispered in his ear, his hand resting possessively on her waist. That hand had once held Kiera's. The memory stabbed deeper than she wanted to admit. Adrian had been her first real love, the one who saw her not as the overlooked daughter, but as herself. For a time, she had believed he would stand beside her against the world. But then Clara had intervened, as she always did, and Adrian had slipped away like water through her fingers. "Don't brood, darling." A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Tessa Monroe, her oldest friend and confidant, handing her a glass of wine. Tessa's eyes flicked toward Adrian and Clara, then back to Kiera with sympathy. "You're stronger than this. Don't let them see it hurts." Kiera forced a smile, though her throat felt tight. "Does it show that much?" "Only to me," Tessa said gently. But inside, the storm raged. Her mother's sharp voice rose above the din. "Kiera, come stand with your sister." Family photos. Kiera obeyed, as always. The photographer positioned them, Clara glowing like a queen, Adrian at her side, and Kiera just a step behind. The flash went off, capturing what the world would see. A perfect family, united, flawless. But behind the smiles, fractures deepened. Later that evening, after the guests drifted into smaller circles and the wine loosened tongues, Kiera found herself cornered by her mother. "You mustn't make everything so difficult," Margaret scolded in a hushed tone. "Your father's condition demands stability. Clara is carrying more responsibility than you realize. The least you can do is support her without sulking in the shadows." "I wasn't sulking," Kiera replied quietly, though her voice trembled. Margaret's eyes hardened. "Then act like it. This family doesn't have room for weakness." Weakness. The word clung to Kiera like a stain. She swallowed the ache in her chest and excused herself, slipping away into the dimly lit hallway. There, away from the laughter and music, her facade cracked. She pressed her back to the wall, breath shaky, eyes stinging. For a moment, she considered walking out, leaving the charade behind. But she knew she couldn't, not yet. A sound pulled her back. Footsteps. Kiera straightened as Adrian appeared at the end of the hallway. His expression softened when he saw her, a flicker of something unspoken crossing his face. "Kiera," he said quietly, almost regretfully. Her pulse quickened. She hated how her body still reacted to his voice, to the way he said her name like it still meant something. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. He hesitated, then stepped closer. "I just wanted to know, are you all right?" The question almost broke her. But she steadied herself, masking the vulnerability with steel. "Don't pretend you care, Adrian. You made your choice." His jaw tightened, guilt flickering in his eyes. "It wasn't that simple." "It always is," Kiera said, her voice sharp. Before he could respond, Clara's voice echoed down the hall. "Adrian, what are you doing?" He froze, torn for a moment, then turned back toward Clara, leaving Kiera standing alone in the shadows once again. The ache in her chest solidified into something darker, something she hadn't felt before. Not just hurt, not just jealousy, resolve. For the first time in her life, Kiera felt the stirrings of defiance. The Langstons had underestimated her for too long. Clara had stolen too much. And Adrian's betrayal cut deepest of all. As she returned to the ballroom, her expression calm and unreadable, a single thought crystallized in her mind. This was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning. The next morning, sunlight filtered through heavy velvet curtains, casting long stripes of gold across Kiera's bedroom floor. She had barely slept, her mind replaying every word, every look from the night before. Clara's triumphant smile, Adrian's guilty hesitation, her mother's cold dismissal. The Langston mansion was already alive with movement. Servants moved briskly through the halls, preparing breakfast and tending to Edward Langston's needs. His declining health had become the unspoken centerpiece of the household. A man once feared in boardrooms now struggled to climb the stairs without help. Kiera found him in the library, seated in his favorite leather chair, a blanket draped over his frail legs. His silver hair caught the morning light, and though his frame had weakened, his eyes still carried that sharp, commanding glint. "Father," she greeted softly. He looked up, studying her face with a gaze that felt both piercing and weary. "You disappeared early last night." Kiera hesitated, then shrugged lightly. It was overwhelming. A ghost of a smile tugged at his lips. "You've always preferred the quiet corners, haven't you?" Her throat tightened. With her father, things were complicated. He had rarely interfered in the favoritism between his daughters, leaving Margaret's harsh judgments to stand. Yet, in moments like these, she caught glimpses of warmth, as if he saw her more clearly than he let on. "I suppose I have," Kiera admitted. Edward's hand trembled as he reached for the glass of water on the table. Without hesitation, Kiera crossed the room, steadying his hand until the glass reached his lips. "Clara was never built for patience," he said suddenly, his voice low. "But you endure." The words startled her. They were not praise, exactly, but they carried a weight she had longed to hear. Before she could respond, the door opened, and Clara swept in like a storm. Draped in silk, her hair flawless, she moved with the confidence of someone who believed the world bent to her will. "Father," she said brightly, ignoring Kiera's presence. "I've arranged for the attorney to visit this week. We should finalize everything now before." Edward raised a hand, silencing her. "Not today, Clara." Clara's lips pressed into a thin line, but she recovered quickly, shifting her gaze to Kiera. "I hope you're not filling his head with your usual melodrama." Kiera's chest tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "I was just helping him drink his water." "Of course," Clara replied, her smile sugar-coated with venom. Edward sighed heavily, the tension between his daughters visibly exhausting him. "Both of you enough." Clara turned on her heel and left, her perfume lingering in her wake. Silence settled again, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock. Kiera exhaled slowly, her father's earlier words echoing in her mind. "You endure." But endurance wasn't enough anymore. Later that afternoon, Kiera met Tessa at a quiet cafe in town. The contrast to the suffocating mansion was stark, the clinking of cups, the hum of conversation, the scent of fresh pastries. Here, she could breathe. Tessa leaned forward, her eyes sharp with concern. "You look like you've been carrying the weight of the world." Kiera stirred her tea absent-mindedly. "Maybe I have." Let me guess, Clara? A humorless laugh escaped her. Who else? Tessa reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You can't keep letting her walk over you, Kiera. One day, something has to give. Kiera's gaze dropped to the swirling tea. What if that day is closer than I thought? Tessa tilted her head. What do you mean? But Kiera shook her head, unwilling to put the storm inside her into words just yet. Instead, she asked, do you ever wonder what life would be like if I had fought harder? If I had held on to Adrian? Tessa's expression softened. Kiera, you can't blame yourself for his weakness. If he truly loved you, Clara couldn't have stolen him. The words offered comfort, but only briefly, because deep down, Kiera wondered if maybe she hadn't been enough, if maybe Clara's fire had simply outshone her quiet light. Their conversation was interrupted by the sharp trill of Kiera's phone. The screen lit up with a name she hadn't expected. Adrian Locke. Her heart skipped. Tessa raised an eyebrow. Are you going to answer? Kiera hesitated, then slid the phone across the table, as though distance could erase temptation. No, not now. But the missed call lingered like a shadow. That evening, Kiera returned to the mansion to find a scene unraveling in the drawing room. Clara's voice, sharp and shrill, carried through the hall. Ridiculous. I've given everything to this family, and yet you still treat me like a child. Margaret's cold reply cut through the air. Discipline is not neglect, Clara. Your father and I expect maturity, not tantrums. Kiera paused outside the doorway, unseen, listening. I am the one keeping this family afloat, Clara snapped. I manage the estate, I handle the social ties, I ensure our name still commands respect. And what does Kiera do? She lurks in the shadows, offering pity when no one asks for it. Margaret's silence was telling. Not defense, just weary agreement. Kiera's hands clenched at her sides. The old hurt burned, but beneath it, something sharper emerged. She stepped into the room, her voice steady. Careful, Clara. Shadows have a way of growing when the lights burn out. Both women turned, startled. Clara's eyes narrowed, but Kiera didn't flinch. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. For the first time, Clara looked at her not as a nuisance but as a threat. And in that moment, Kiera realized she had power. Not the kind Clara flaunted in public, but something deeper, quieter, more dangerous. The kind of power no one saw coming until it was too late. That night, as the house fell into uneasy silence, Kiera sat by her window, staring out at the darkened gardens. Adrian's missed call still weighed on her. Why now? Why reach out after everything? Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Adrian. It was a message from an unknown number. You think you know the truth, Kiera. But you don't. Watch your back. Her blood ran cold. She read the message twice, her mind racing. Who could have sent it? And what truth was she blind to? The mansion suddenly felt less like a home and more like a trap, its walls pressing in on her, its secrets pulsing in the dark. For the first time, Kiera wondered if her family's fractures weren't just emotional wounds, but cracks that hid something far more dangerous. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The message burned in Kiera's mind long after the screen went dark. You think you know the truth, Kiera. But you don't. Watch your back. Her first instinct had been to dismiss it as a cruel prank. But something about the phrasing, the cold certainty of it, sent a chill down her spine. Whoever sent it knew her, knew the tangled web she was trapped in. She tried to sleep that night, but every creak of the old mansion sounded sharper, more deliberate. Shadows seemed to stretch further than they should. By morning, her nerves were raw. She found her cousin Harper laying in the conservatory, humming softly as she tended to the orchids. Harper had always been the softer presence in the Langston clan, often overlooked like Kiera, though less entangled in the family's politics. Another sleepless night? Harper asked, glancing at her pale face. Kiera hesitated. Something like that. Harper brushed soil from her fingers, tilting her head. You look like someone who's seen a ghost. Maybe I have. Kiera managed a weak smile, but her mind replayed the text again and again. She considered confiding in Harper, but stopped herself. If the message was a warning, she had no idea who she could trust. Later that afternoon, Kiera visited the family physician, Dr. Marcus Layton, who had been overseeing Edward's decline. The doctor was a calm, deliberate man with kind eyes, though there was always an air of guardedness about him when discussing Edward's condition. "How is he today?" Kiera asked, following Marcus into the study. "He's stable, but the progression is inevitable," Marcus replied, his tone clinical. "Stress and conflict will only hasten the decline. I strongly advise you and your sister to minimize tension in the house." Kiera let out a dry laugh. "You might as well ask fire and ice to coexist without melting or burning." Marcus studied her carefully. "And how are you holding up?" She blinked, caught off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Because you look like someone carrying more than grief." His words struck too close to home. Kiera forced composure, offering a polite smile. "I'll manage. I always do." But inside, the unease grew. That evening, Clara hosted a dinner in the mansion's grand dining room. The long table glittered with silverware, crystal glasses, and plates adorned with delicacies. Yet beneath the grandeur, tension simmered. Adrian sat at Clara's right hand, his expression polite but distant. Kiera avoided his gaze, focusing instead on the flicker of candlelight. Midway through the meal, Clara raised her glass. "To family, our strength, our legacy, our future." Her eyes lingered on Kiera as she spoke the last word, the unspoken message clear. "Your place in this family's future is limited." Kiera's jaw tightened, but before she could respond, Edward's hand trembled violently, sending his glass shattering against the table. "Father!" Clara cried, rushing to his side. The room descended into chaos. Marcus, who had joined them for dinner, quickly steadied Edward, checking his pulse and murmuring reassurances. Kiera stood frozen, her heart pounding. For a split second, she saw fear flash across her father's face, not just of his failing body, but something deeper. Something he wasn't saying. Later, after Edward was escorted back to his chambers, the family splintered. Clara blamed the stress of the household. Margaret snapped at the staff. Adrian remained silent, his expression unreadable. Kiera slipped away to the library, her sanctuary since childhood. The smell of aged paper and ink greeted her like an old friend. She trailed her fingers along the spines of books, searching for calm, when a loose sheet of parchment slipped out from between two volumes. Curious, she unfolded it. It wasn't a book page, it was a letter. Her father's handwriting, shaky, but unmistakable. "If something happens before the will is signed, know this. Appearances deceive. Trust no one, not even those closest to you. The truth will not set you free, Kiera. It will bind you." Her blood ran cold. She read the lines again, her pulse racing. What truth was her father hiding? And why address it to her specifically, not Clara? The library door creaked. Kiera stuffed the letter into her pocket just as Clara entered, her eyes sharp. "There you are," Clara said smoothly. "Always sneaking off. Tell me, sister, what secrets do you bury in these dusty shelves?" Kiera forced a neutral smile. "Books are less judgmental company than people." Clara smirked, circling the room slowly, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Careful, Kiera. Too much solitude breeds strange thoughts. You wouldn't want people to think you've lost touch with reality." Her words carried an edge, a warning wrapped in velvet. But Kiera stood taller, her hand tightening around the letter hidden in her pocket. For the first time, she felt Clara's taunts less like stings and more like confirmation. There were secrets here, and she was closer to them than Clara realized. That night, she sat by her window again, unfolding the letter in the moonlight. Her father's words haunted her. "Appearances deceive. Trust no one." Her phone buzzed again, startling her. Another message from an unknown number. "He knows. That's why they want him silent." Her breath caught. The phone nearly slipped from her hands. They want him silent. Her mind raced. Did this mean her father's illness wasn't natural? Was someone trying to hasten his end? The mansion's silence pressed in around her, heavy, suffocating. For the first time, Kiera felt like prey in her own home. But beneath the fear, a fire kindled. If someone thought they could scare her into silence, they didn't know Kiera Langston well enough. Because shadows didn't just hide, they learned, they watched, and eventually they struck. And Kiera was done being invisible. The drive back home felt endless, though Kiera Langston barely registered the passing headlights or the rhythm of rain beating against the windshield. Her mind was consumed by the image of Callum at the piano, his hands tender on Aurora's shoulder, his smile the very one he once reserved only for her. By the time she stepped into the house, silence pressed against her like a weight. The fire she had left burning was little more than ash. Kiera's shoes squelched against the polished wood floor, leaving faint muddy prints as she moved to the kitchen. Her trembling fingers fumbled with the wine bottle until she managed to pour herself a glass. The bitter taste was a poor match for the bitterness clawing at her chest. But as she sank into the sofa, something strange caught her eye. A slip of paper lay on the coffee table, her name written in Callum's neat handwriting. She hesitated, then opened it.
Kiera,
If you're reading this, I need you to trust me. Don't go looking for answers you're not ready to face. Some truths cut deeper than betrayal. Please, stay away from Aurora tonight. Her heart pounded. Stay away from Aurora? What could he mean? The words blurred as fury rose inside her. He dared to write her a warning, as though she were the one in danger. A noise shattered the silence, a faint rustle, a floorboard creaking upstairs. Kiera froze. She hadn't left any lights on in the bedroom. Her pulse raced as she set the wine glass down, her hand trembling so violently that red liquid sloshed over the rim. Slowly, carefully, she climbed the staircase. Each step groaned under her weight, and she found herself holding her breath. At the landing, the dim glow from the half-open bedroom door spilled into the hallway. She pushed the door wider. Her breath hitched. On the bed lay a small velvet box, open, revealing a necklace she had never seen before, an intricate silver chain with a blood-red stone at its center. Beside it was another note, this one in Aurora's handwriting. Kiera, you were never meant to find this. But since you have, know that Callum isn't who you think he is. Neither of us is. By the time you read this, it will already be too late. Kiera's stomach twisted violently. Her vision tunneled as she clutched the note, her mind racing with questions, fear, and dread. She spun around, heart hammering in her throat. The hallway behind her was empty. Yet she could feel it, someone was there. Watching. Waiting. A whisper slipped through the darkness, soft, almost playful. Kiera? Her blood turned to ice. And just like that, the fragile threads of her world unraveled. Kiera Langston didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner of her bedroom, knees pulled to her chest, the velvet box and both notes resting on the carpet before her like poisoned artifacts. The red stone caught the moonlight, glowing faintly, as if mocking her. Her mind kept circling the same questions. Why would Callum warn me away from Aurora? Why would Aurora claim Callum isn't who he seems? What secret binds them together? By dawn, her exhaustion was etched into her face, but determination burned in her eyes. She wouldn't sit passively while her marriage and her sanity unraveled. When Callum returned home late that morning, he looked startled to see her awake, dressed, and waiting at the kitchen counter. His tie hung loose, his shirt rumpled. He looked like a man carrying too many secrets. "You're up early," he said cautiously, dropping his keys into the bowl. "I never went to sleep," Kiera replied, her voice colder than she intended. She slid the folded note across the counter toward him. "Care to explain this?" Callum froze. For a long moment, his expression gave nothing away. Then he exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Kiera, you weren't supposed to." "Weren't supposed to what?" "Read it? Know that my husband is sneaking warnings into my house while whispering with my sister?" He flinched at her sharpness, but his eyes held something deeper. Fear, not guilt. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," she demanded, voice rising. "Because right now, it looks like betrayal wrapped in secrets." Before he could respond, Kiera's phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, and her stomach dropped. A message from an unknown number. No name, no photo. Just a single line of text. He's lying. Meet me tonight at the old greenhouse if you want the truth. Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked up at Callum. His eyes flicked to the phone screen, and she swore she saw a shadow of recognition. Kiera, he said firmly, whatever that is, delete it. Don't go. Promise me. But his insistence only deepened her suspicion. For the first time in their marriage, Kiera wasn't sure whether she was staring at the man she loved or a stranger wearing his face. The hours after that text stretched like an eternity. Kiera moved through the house like a ghost, every step deliberate, every sound magnified. Callum had left for work. At least that's what he claimed. She watched his car pull away from the driveway, but unease still clung to her like a second skin. The old greenhouse. Just the mention of it stirred something in her chest. It wasn't far, half an hour's drive to the estate her family once owned, before her parents sold it. She hadn't set foot there since she was a teenager, when the glass panes were cracked, vines curling through shattered walls. What possible connection could it have to Callum and Aurora now? She tried to reason with herself. The message could be a cruel prank, a trap, a dangerous lure. But still, her eyes kept drifting back to the velvet box upstairs. The blood-red stone seemed to whisper every time she closed her eyes. Seek the truth. Her best friend, Lena Prescott, was the only person she trusted enough to confide in. Kiera dialed her number, her voice tight when Lena picked up. Lena, something's happening. I think Callum's hiding something big. And Aurora's involved. There was a pause on the other end. Kiera slowed down.
What are you talking about?
Kiera explained everything. The notes, the necklace, the message about the greenhouse. By the end, Lena's voice had dropped to a whisper. This sounds dangerous. Please tell me you're not going alone tonight. I have to, Kiera whispered. If I don't, I'll drown in these questions. I can't live in this fog anymore. You don't even know who sent that message. What if it's not Aurora? What if it's worse? Kiera glanced at the clock. 6:45 p.m. The message had given her no time, no date. It had to mean tonight. I'll be careful, she said, her tone firm but her stomach tight. If I'm not back by midnight, call the police. The silence on the line stretched, then Lena finally breathed out. Kiera, please don't do this blindly. But Kiera had already made up her mind. As dusk settled, she packed her coat, her phone, and the necklace in a small bag. The storm that had threatened all day finally broke, lightning splitting the horizon as rain hammered the windshield of her car. The wipers struggled to keep up, but she pressed on, heart pounding with every mile. By the time she reached the overgrown gates of the old greenhouse, night had swallowed the countryside whole. The structure loomed ahead, broken glass glinting in the flicker of distant lightning, vines strangling its frame. Kiera killed the engine, sitting in silence as the rain drummed on the roof. She wasn't alone. Another car was parked near the entrance. Its headlights were off, but steam curled faintly from the exhaust. Her pulse quickened. Whoever had summoned her here was already waiting. Kiera gripped the strap of her bag so tightly that her knuckles whitened. The other car sat motionless, its tinted windows black mirrors under the rain. She forced herself to move, each step crunching gravel beneath her boots until she stood at the rusted gate. The greenhouse loomed before her like a relic of some forgotten time. Once elegant, now decayed, its frame sagging under the weight of ivy, panes of glass shattered, the skeletal roof dripping with rain. The storm illuminated it in violent flashes, each burst of lightning making it appear alive, as though breathing. Pushing the gate open, she slipped inside. The smell of damp earth and rotting leaves enveloped her. Her flashlight cut a trembling beam through the darkness, illuminating jagged glass, twisted vines, and shadows that seemed to move when she blinked. Kiera. Her breath caught. The voice came from the far end of the greenhouse. She swung the light toward it, her pulse drumming in her ears. A figure emerged from the gloom, cloaked in black, rain dripping from the brim of their hood. Slowly, the hood was pulled back, revealing Aurora. Kiera's stomach dropped. You? She whispered, fury and confusion tangling in her voice. Aurora's expression was unreadable, but her eyes gleamed with something between sorrow and defiance. You weren't supposed to find out this way. Find out what? Kiera's voice cracked with raw emotion. That you're sneaking around with my husband? That you leave cryptic notes in my bedroom? Aurora stepped closer, raising her hands as though to calm her. Callum isn't lying to you the way you think he is. He's protecting you. And I. Protecting me? Kiera barked out a bitter laugh. By tearing our marriage apart? Aurora flinched, but her voice hardened.
You don't understand.
If you knew the truth about Callum, about us, you'd never forgive him. Or me. The storm outside raged, rattling the greenhouse. A sheet of rain blasted through a broken pane, dampening Kiera's hair as she stood frozen, staring at her sister. Then make me understand, Kiera demanded. Aurora hesitated, her lips parting as if she were about to speak, when suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the greenhouse. Heavy, purposeful. Aurora's eyes widened in panic. She grabbed Kiera's arm, her nails digging into her sleeve. We're not alone. He followed you. Kiera's blood ran cold.
Who?
But Aurora's answer was swallowed by the sound of glass shattering at the far end of the greenhouse, someone forcing their way inside. Lightning illuminated a tall silhouette stepping through the broken frame, rain dripping off a long coat. Kiera's heart stopped, because it was Callum. Lightning split the sky as Callum's silhouette filled the greenhouse doorway, his shadow stretching across the shattered glass floor. Kiera, he said, his voice sharp with urgency. Step away from her. Kiera's breath faltered. From Aurora? My own sister? Aurora tightened her grip on Kiera's arm, her voice shaking. Don't listen to him. He'll twist everything. He always does. Callum's gaze darkened. You don't know what she's capable of. The storm howled, thunder rattling the greenhouse as the three of them stood locked in a tense triangle, truths hanging in the air like a blade, waiting to fall. I'm done with riddles, Kiera snapped, yanking her arm free. Both of you. No more secrets. I want the truth. Now. Aurora's eyes softened, almost pleading. She took a hesitant step toward her sister. Kiera, I didn't betray you. Neither did Callum. What's between us? It isn't an affair. Kiera's chest tightened. Then what is it? Aurora glanced at Callum, who shook his head violently, but Aurora pressed on, her voice trembling. We've been meeting in secret because of the necklace. The one you found. Kiera's mind reeled. The blood-red stone upstairs. The warning note. The cryptic message. What about it? She demanded. Aurora swallowed hard, her face pale. That stone doesn't belong to you, or me, or even Callum. It belongs to someone else, someone dangerous. And if they find out you've touched it, they'll come for you. The words punched through Kiera's chest like ice water. What are you talking about? Who would care about some old necklace? Before Aurora could answer, Callum strode forward, his face twisted with frustration and fear. Enough, Aurora. You weren't supposed to drag her into this. Kiera turned on him, her voice shaking with rage. Into what, Callum? Tell me why my marriage is a tangle of lies. Tell me why I'm standing in a ruined greenhouse with both of you warning me about a necklace, like it's cursed. Callum's jaw clenched. For a moment, it seemed like he might stay silent forever. But then, his words came like a confession pulled from the depths. Because that necklace isn't just jewelry. It's proof. Proof of something I did years ago, something that could destroy us all if it ever came out. Kiera's blood went cold. Aurora stared at him, wide-eyed. Callum, she whispered, horror in her voice. You didn't. But his silence was answer enough. The air in the greenhouse thickened. Rain hammered against the roof. Kiera's hands trembled as she looked from her husband to her sister, realizing that whatever truth they had been hiding wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival. And she was standing in the middle of it. Suddenly, the glass behind them exploded inward, shards raining down as a figure in black stormed into the greenhouse, their face obscured, their presence electric with menace. Aurora screamed. Callum shoved Kiera behind him. The figure's voice was low, steady, and terrifyingly calm. You shouldn't have touched what isn't yours. Shards of glass glittered across the greenhouse floor like scattered stars. The intruders' boots crunched as they stepped closer, water dripping from their coat, their face hidden beneath the brim of a soaked hat. Kiera's pulse thundered in her ears. She pressed back against the wall as Callum placed himself between her and the figure, his shoulders taut, his jaw clenched like steel. Aurora clutched Kiera's wrist, trembling, yet her eyes stayed locked on the intruder with recognition and dread. You're too late, the figure said, their voice carrying over the storm. She's already touched it. The necklace. The stone. Kiera's breath came shallow, every instinct screaming to flee, but her body felt anchored in place. What do you mean? She demanded, her voice shaky. What happens if I touch it? The figure tilted their head, as if amused. Then you've become part of the debt. A long overdue debt. Aurora gasped. No, you can't drag her into this. She didn't know. The figure chuckled darkly. Ignorance doesn't erase bloodlines. Bloodlines. The word cut through Kiera like ice. She turned to Callum, but he refused to meet her eyes. His silence was louder than thunder. What are they talking about? Kiera cried, her voice breaking. What have you been hiding from me, Callum? The intruders stepped closer, their shadow engulfing them. Tell her, they commanded. Or I will. Callum's fists tightened at his sides. For the first time, Kiera saw something in him she had never seen before. Pure, unmasked fear. I didn't tell you because I thought I could protect you, he said, his voice raw. But the truth is, you were never supposed to marry me. You were supposed to inherit the stone, and with it, the curse that comes with your family's bloodline. Kiera's knees buckled. Aurora caught her just in time. What are you saying? She whispered. Callum's eyes glistened. Your parents made a pact decades ago. The stone wasn't just passed down, it was bound to your family. And now, it's bound to you. The intruder's lips curved into a cold smile. And debts, Mrs. Langston, are always collected. A bolt of lightning ripped across the sky, shaking the greenhouse to its foundations. Kiera's world collapsed with the sound of thunder, her marriage, her family, and her very bloodline all tied to a secret she never asked to inherit. The storm roared above, glass trembling in its rusted frames, yet the greenhouse felt suffocatingly still. Kiera's skin prickled with cold sweat as the intruder stepped closer, their presence pulling the very air from her lungs. Aurora pulled her into a protective half-embrace, whispering frantically, "Don't listen to them. They feed on fear." But her trembling voice betrayed her own terror. The stranger's gaze cut straight through them. "You've carried the stone, Kiera. That makes you the heir. And heirs don't get to walk away." Kiera's throat constricted. "I never asked for this. I didn't even know it existed until last night." "That doesn't matter," the figure replied smoothly. They reached into their coat and withdrew an old, weathered book, its leather cracked and symbols etched into its cover. The sight of it sent a shiver through Kiera's bones. "This," the intruder said, tapping the book, "is the ledger of blood. Your family signed their names long before you were born. Their wealth, their safety, their power. It all came from what's written here. But nothing comes without a cost." Aurora's voice rose in desperation. "She's not the one you want. Take me instead." The intruder smirked. "You tried that already, little sister. But the stone chose Kiera. The bloodline flows stronger in her veins. You can't rewrite what's been bound." Kiera's head spun, her voice breaking as she turned on Callum. You knew all along, didn't you?" Callum's eyes shimmered with guilt. "I tried to keep it from you. I thought if I carried the burden with Aurora, you'd never have to. But when you found the stone, everything changed." The intruder snapped the ledger shut, the sound like a gunshot in the tense air. "Time's up. Either she comes with me, willingly, or I drag her into the debt by force." Kiera's heart hammered as she realized what they meant. This wasn't just about secrets, it was about survival. Her choices were crumbling into ashes. She took a shaky step forward, her voice trembling but fierce. If this is my family's curse, then it's mine to face. But I won't be dragged like some helpless pawn. Aurora clutched her wrist in protest. Kiera, no. Don't give yourself up. But Kiera shook her off, her eyes never leaving the intruder's shadowed face. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down like the storm above. I'll go with you, she whispered. But only if you tell me the truth first. Tell me exactly what this debt costs. The intruder tilted their head slowly, a smile curving their lips as though they'd been waiting for those words all along. And with a voice cold enough to freeze the air, they answered, Your life, or the life of the one you love most. The words hung in the damp air, heavier than the storm outside. Your life, or the life of the one you love most. Kiera's stomach twisted. The greenhouse felt like it was closing in, the vines tightening around its rusted frame as if the earth itself wanted to strangle her. Aurora's grip tightened on her hand. Don't listen, she hissed. They want to break you. But Callum stepped forward, his face pale, jaw clenched. Don't, he said, voice sharp, directed not at the intruder but at Kiera. His eyes glistened with something she couldn't read, fear, guilt, or maybe love. The intruder's chuckle echoed like broken glass. Interesting. He pretends to protect you, yet he hides the truth from you. Isn't that betrayal in its purest form? Kiera snapped her gaze toward Callum. Is it true? If I don't give myself up, they'll take you? Callum's silence was deafening. His throat worked, his lips parted, but no words came out. That silence spoke louder than any confession. Aurora's voice cracked. Kiera, don't you see? He knew. All this time. That's why he stayed close to me. That's why he kept secrets. Not to protect you, but to protect himself. Kiera staggered back, as if struck. No, Callum wouldn't. The storm roared louder. Glass panes trembling, rain slamming the roof. Callum finally broke, his voice raw. I was trying to keep you safe. If they thought Aurora or I were bound to the stone, maybe, just maybe, they'd overlook you. Aurora's face twisted with rage. Lies. You knew she would inherit it eventually. You just didn't want to face the cost yourself. The intruder raised the ledger again, its cracked spine opening with a groan. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the damp pages, as if the storm fed them. Choose, they commanded.
Now.
Her life, or his. The book pulsed in rhythm with Kiera's heart, every beat screaming at her. She looked at Callum, the man she'd shared her bed, her secrets, her soul with. Then, at Aurora, her sister, fractured and flawed, but bound to her by blood. The storm outside reached a fever pitch. Lightning split the sky, thunder rolled like a drumbeat of fate, and in that blinding flash of light, Kiera saw something in Callum's eyes she had never seen before. Calculation. Not fear. Not love. Calculation. Her blood ran cold. He wasn't just hiding secrets. He was weighing outcomes. And in that moment, Kiera realized the most terrifying truth of all. Callum might not be the one she needed to protect. He might be the one she needed protection from. The vines burst through the glass roof with a shattering crack, shards raining down like jagged stars. Kiera ducked instinctively, her heart hammering as the greenhouse seemed to pulse alive, each tendril winding tighter around steel and stone. The intruder stepped forward at last, their hood falling back, revealing a face Kiera knew all too well. Her cousin Alara. The room tilted. Her knees nearly gave way. No, it can't be. Alara's smile was razor-thin. Oh, it can. Every storm you've weathered, every betrayal you've questioned, it all pointed here. I was the ghost in your shadows, the whisper in your nightmares. And Callum, she turned, eyes glinting like broken glass, was my pawn from the start. Kiera's breath froze. She turned to Callum, who stood rigid, jaw clenched, eyes begging her not to believe. But his silence, again, always his silence, was its own confession. Aurora's fury erupted. You destroyed us, she screamed. lunging at Alara. But the vines snapped forward, wrapping her wrist midair, slamming her back against the wall. Kiera's scream tore out of her throat. Let her go. Alara's gaze fixed on her, voice dripping with venom. You were always the golden one, weren't you?
Loved.
Trusted. Chosen. While I was left to rot. So I built something of my own, an empire from your shadows. And tonight, you'll hand me the last piece, the ledger. The book pulsed in Alara's hand, alive, hungering. The storm outside roared louder, feeding it. Kiera staggered forward, her entire world crumbling. You did all of this because of envy? Alara's laugh was sharp, almost manic. Not envy. Justice. And then Callum moved. Faster than Kiera could process, he ripped the ledger from Alara's grasp. The vines shrieked, recoiling, the greenhouse groaning as if the earth itself convulsed. Alara's scream was primal. Traitor. Callum's voice thundered, raw. I did what I had to keep her safe. He thrust the ledger toward Kiera, his hands shaking.
Take it.
End this. Kiera hesitated, torn between the man who had deceived her and the cousin who had destroyed her. Every instinct screamed that whichever choice she made would shatter everything forever. Aurora, still bound, cried out, Kiera, don't trust either of them. The storm surged, vines splitting stone, glass exploding inward. The world was collapsing. Kiera's hand closed around the ledger. It burned against her skin, 1,000 voices whispering. She lifted her gaze, meeting Callum's desperate eyes, then Alara's seething rage. And in that suspended heartbeat, Kiera realized the only way to win was not to choose either side. With a scream, she hurled the ledger into the heart of the storm. Lightning struck, consuming it in a blinding flash. The vines shriveled, glass rained down, and the very air seemed to tear apart with the sound of rending earth. When the light faded, silence hung heavy. The greenhouse was in ruins. Alara was gone, swallowed by the storm. Aurora lay bruised but alive. And Callum knelt before her, shattered. Kiera, I never wanted this for you. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. But you chose it anyway. She turned, walking into the night as dawn broke over the horizon. Aurora staggered beside her, leaning on her for support. Behind them, Callum's broken whisper carried on the wind. I loved you. Kiera didn't look back. She couldn't, because love, loyalty, and betrayal had become indistinguishable in the storm's wake. And though the ledger was gone, the shadows it unleashed still lingered, secrets buried deep, waiting to resurface. The story was over, but the suspense was not.